Very good evening to everyone. We are here with yet another virtual session. Today, we are here with Anchal Priya. She is a counseling psychologist. She is in under training and she is final year of MA Clinical Psychology from Mumbai University. And she is interning under supervision with the One Ruela Foundation, a suicide helpline. And she is a council member at WICCI, Bali Mental Health Council. Thank you so much with this small introduction. We welcome you on our platform on your growth for this wonderful session and for your time to all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me on this platform and giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much, on your growth, OYG. And you guys are doing a very, very good job that you are spreading so useful knowledge to everyone and giving so useful information to everyone out there. And yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. We can begin our session.
Okay. So today's topic is memory and emotions. So like if I have to start with like what is memory, I think we all know that memory is something that is related to our past experiences, that we remember like what happens, or something we will remember that okay, this is something that I have learned from my past and I will use this in my future. So memory is something that guides us to our future behaviors. So memory is some kind of things. Before we move further, the very basic things that memory involves, that are encoding, storage, and retrieval. So what happens is in encoding is that we generally in our day-to-day life we encounter so much information in our day-to-day life. Like we are going through by bus, car, we encounter so many information. So what happens in encoding is that we encounter so much information, but in coding we are selective. Like if I am seeing argument happening on a road, or I see a bus going through, or I see a flower, if I am attracted toward flowers, so that I something that I will remember and encode, that in my whole day I saw a beautiful flower and I remember that okay, that was my favorite flower. So then after that storage happens. If that was something that was very attractive towards me, so I will remember that ki, okay, I saw that. And then we retrieve that information. Like I will give you my own example, that if we are studying psychology, if I'm studying psychology from past 6 to 7 years, so I have studied from like 11th class, so I have encoded all the information, that information. And now today, just like that memory topic I studied in my class 11th, 12th, in my graduation, in my masters also. Now today is the time when I'm retrieving that information, or when I retrieve my information in my exams. So these are the things that happens when we encode, store, or retrieve. So these are the meaning of these words that we use in our day-to-day life. So retrieval is something which is very, very important. Why it is important? Because if I am not retrieving any information that I have encoded and stored in my memory, it is useless. I'll give you my own personal example in that. Like I did a Spanish course, like a language course, certificate Spanish course in my graduation times. And after that, something happened, I couldn't continue that. So that information was encoded, was stored in my memory, but it is not retrieved. So I have forgot everything about what I learned in that graduation times about that Spanish language. So retrieval is something which is very important for any information that you encode and store. Then after that comes is something like flash bulb memories. Like there is something like we get memory of some emotional events, like there must be any emotional event that might be traumatic also, that might be very happy also. Like you got your first prize in your class second, so you might have that image in your mind that okay, I got a trophy, I got the first prize in front of everyone in my school. So if you close your eyes and try to remember that situation, that event, you will remember okay, I got this prize, this person was there, because that event event was very important for you. So we get a picture of that thing. So that's why we named this memory as flash bulb memory, that we get a flash of that image in our mind, and we just close our eye and we can see whole event happening there. Then after that is there are different types of memories that we have in our mind. First is the sensory memory, then second is the short term memory, and third is the long term memory. So sensory memory is something that have a large capacity, but information stays there for like half a second, because we encounter, as I said, we encounter so much information. But in sensory memory, those information stays for a half second, and if we are not encoding that information, storing that information, we will be just like, we will forget that information. As we encounter so many things, we don't remember everything. But in our sensory memory, we get that information for some seconds, but we forget that because we just don't pay attention to that information that much. We don't practice that information. So it is the most shortest memory in our brain. Then in sensory memory comes two types of memories. First is the echoic memory, which is the auditory, and the second is the iconic memory, which is the visual. Echoic memory, auditory means like if I show you, I'm just speaking like this, so what you will remember and what you will not remember. If I give you a list and I just speak the words, so in auditory what happens is generally we remember the first word and the last word. But what happens in iconic is a visual representation, that I give you a list, you see those words, image or something, and generally you remember the first thing of that list. Then our comes short term memory. So short term memory is something that in which information lasts from few seconds to 1 minute. If it's practiced, it will go to long term memory. So in short term memory, if it's rehearsed, it will go to long term memory. There are two types of things, two types of short term memory, which is elaborative rehearsal, and the second is the maintenance rehearsal. So maintenance rehearsal we have done in our schools, like most of us have done the rote learning we do. So maintenance rehearsal is same as that we rote learn the things, like our social sciences or EVS or something like that in a school life. We have done rote learning just to see what is written, and we just repeat that information and we just remember that information. This is something which is known as maintenance rehearsal, that after repetition we remember that information. In elaborative rehearsal, what happens is that we try to remember the new information by linking it to the already the information we have. So for that I would give example is, if you know something, like if you want to remember the colors of rainbow, so what we do, we have studied in the school that we remember that the colors of rainbow by uh, putting it in a full form way, in a chunking manner, that Vibgyor. So violet, indigo, and all these colors are there. So we remember the colors of rainbow in that manner. Then after that comes is the long term memory, which is the memory that allows the information to stay there for the of time. So we remember the information here for the longest period of time, if especially in this case also we have to rehearse that information. But yeah, certain aspects are also there in this also, that here we have that explicit memory and the implicit memory. Explicit memory is something that we have in our consciousness, that what is my name, my personal facts, what is my name, where do I live, I know that. If you ask me what is your name, where do you study, I know that consciously. But implicit is something which is in our unconsciousness. So what is unconsciousness is basically, like if I ask you like how to drive a car, like you don't recall every day that how you drive a car. You just sit in your car and things just start happening and you start driving the car. You don't go every day in your car and just recall that, okay, I have to press this, press that, I have to put this gear or that. It just start happening. So implicit memory is something that unconsciously happens with us. Then after that is comes, what are the factors that influence this our long term memory. the major factors that why we forget, and why things like it's a general thing that we have faced in our school life, college life, that why do I forget things, why do we don't remember things? If I'm learning everything, I'm studying for so many hours, and then also I'm not able to recall things. So there are certain factors that influence our long term memory. Yes, information is going to your long term memory, but due to certain factors which you are not acknowledging, that because of that your long term memory is getting affected. So the first thing that comes is the way you have taken in that information in the first place. So how much aware you were, how much attentive you were while you were studying that thing. Were there any distractive elements? Like we generally do say that while we are studying maths, we generally listen to music, but it is like it depends on individual to individual, but studies have shown that it is not good. But yeah, some studies have also shown that it do improve the performance, but some studies have shown that do not improve the performance. So it all depends on you, that if you are able to put your attention on that or not. And listening to music while studying do distract your attention, and you're not able to give your full attention to whatever you are studying, and that's why you are not able to remember some parts of what you studied. You might say that, oh my god, why I don't remembering that thing, that part of this answer. And this is something that we all have faced. So this is something that happens when it comes to why the things are not going into the long term memory. And the second is that how much time we have given to that information to process that information. Then comes like forgetting, as I've talked about. So forgetting is something that happens in the very first, like after the first hour you have studied. So I have seen many students, and in my training process also I have been encountered to many students who come up with the problem like, I study for 5 to 6 hours and I'm not able to remember anything. So the problem begins here is that you are studying for 5 to 6 hours continuously. So what happens is that in a long term memory also, after 1 hour you have to give a break to yourself so that you can remember that information. If you're not giving a break to yourself, your new information will just delete that old information, and you will, when you will sit to revise it again, you will say that, oh my god, I studied for 5 to 6 hours and I'm not remembering anything, why it's happening to me? So this is the reason that we should give at least 10 to 15 minutes of break in our studying pattern, and do not study continuously. Children, students do think that studying for 5 to 6 hours or 7 hours continuously will help me. It will never help you. It will only create a mess, and you will be exhausted at the end of the day. So it's better to learn something, learn a topic, then after that take a 5 minutes of break or 10 minutes of break, just calm your mind, take a nap or something, or just close your eyes or listen to music, or you can just roam around or do something or the other, but just don't continuously study. So this is something which happens in forgetting. So forgetting happens in both short term memory also and long term memory also. When you are rehearsing things in your short term memory so that it can go to long term memory, this forgetting can happen in short term memory by trace decay. Trace decay is something, if the length of the information that we are retaining is very important. So the longer the time, the more the memory trace decays. So जितना हम ज्यादा टाइम लेते हैं उसको याद करने के लिए, तो वो और ज्यादा ट्रेस डिके हो जाती है। इसलिए द ब्रेक्स आर इम्पोर्टेंट। अगर आप एक चीज को करते रहोगे ये सोच के कि ये मेरे माइंड में चली जाएगी, तो ऐसा नहीं होता है। We have to give a break to ourselves because our memory has certain capacity. After that, certain words we can only remember certain words, which was talked in the displacement thing. What happens in displacement, if we are studying something, so we in our mind we have 7 plus minus 2 digits thing in our items, that I can remember 9 words or 5 words in a limit. So it happens is like that. If you are going beyond that, so their mind can't handle things. So you start getting forgetting things, and you are like that, why I'm not remembering that. Yeah. after that comes is that let short-term memory things happen like this. Then after comes is long-term memory, that how we forget things in long-term memory. So in long-term memory the interference is there, like interference, like there are certain other things that, as I said, the tension is not there, or something was happening at that time when you were studying, so interference was there. So interference is of two types in long-term memory. First is the proactive interference, and the second is the retroactive interference. In retroactive interference, what happens is that the newer things can interfere with the remembering the older things. So basically that if the newer thing, you are learning something new, so you are not able to remember the old things. Like you studied for 2 hours, you studied a topic like memory, you studied for 2 hours, like what are the types of memory, something, and after that you studied like why we forget. So you will forget the new part that you have learned, the older part that you have learned, and the new part forgetting you will remember, because that interference is happening, you didn't give break to yourself, so your mind will remember only the new information that you have studied right now, and not the information that was old. And what happens is proactive interference is that when past memories interfere with encoding the new. Like if you are studying about some new language, so generally what happened with me also when I was studying about Spanish, new language, so my native language interfered with that. I was not able to, like, grammatical mistakes were there because my native language was interfering that. So my past memories were coming in the learning of my new things. So this something happens in the proactive interference. Then third factor that affect our long term memory is lack of consolidation. So lack of consolidation is something that how much time we gave the new information to take place, कि हमने कितना time दिया. If I'm learning something today, like an article, so how much time I give myself to learn that article. And it is said and it is researched also that if you write the things that you are learning, then there are better chances that you can keep that in your long term memory. So it is good that if you write the things, make notes or whatever you are learning, because sometimes what happens is that when we write certain things, so in our brain that image is created that okay, I was writing this at this point, we can create hints, so that all these things help us to remember the information. So then after this come is that why do we have memory loss? After some time we have seen like in our parents also, we see when our parents get older that they do have memory loss. And not only that, we in certain young adults also we see that memory loss is there. So why memory loss is there? So there are certain factors why memory loss happens. So alcohol abuse, drug abuse, or certain brain injury is there. So for that, because of that, the memory loss can happen. Or the aging is the most common factor that we know, because of which the memory loss happens. That we all know in our grandparents that memory loss is there. They do forget things. Brain tumors is another factor due to which the memory loss happens. And memory loss can also happen due to the child abuse or the events that you faced in your childhood. Due to that, there are children who don't remember anything about their childhood. If you ask them what happened with you in your childhood or their traumatic events, they don't remember anything about that. And due to which that later do affect their memory when they become in adults or adolescents, they do affect. So another thing, if we talk about only older people, why memory loss happen in them? So first thing is dementia. I think we all have must have heard about this term, that dementia do happens in long term memory loss. And under dementia, like dementia is a broad term, under dementia comes certain things. So dementia is a long term term, what happens in dementia is that we don't remember things, first of all. Also, there is inability to make decisions, and this interfere with our in our everyday activities and everything, and we're not able to perform our everyday tasks basically. So we need guidance, we need someone with us. So generally our grandparents do need that, they do need certain people around them because they don't remember certain things. And after dementia, in under dementia comes the Alzheimer's. That's something very common and we have heard in older adults. Alzheimer's is something that is a part of type of dementia. So dementia is not something that will affect adults, but yeah, older adults are affected by that. So what is Alzheimer's disease? Alzheimer's disease is a neurological disorder. Okay, so in what happens in that is that our brain cells shrink. So basically, when the gray part and all these things shrinks in our brain, so older adults are not able to remember that information. So that's why if we ask them that okay, what you ate in your breakfast, they don't remember that. By night they don't remember that, because they have lose that capacity to remember even small things. After that, basically Alzheimer's happen in short term memory. If that disease is like progresses, it continues, then we develop the amnesia. So amnesia is another disorder that people do develop if in the long term memory. So Alzheimer's is for short term memory and amnesia is for long term memory. What happens in amnesia is we are not able to recall any information at all. Sometimes people do forget that where do they live. Sometimes we have seen so many news, we see so many articles on that we are not able to find our grandparents. They just left the house in evening and they haven't come back to home. So this is what happened in amnesia, that they're not able to remember all these details, that where they live, where their children are. If anyone asks them that okay, from where you are, so they don't know that. They can't tell you that okay, I'm from this side or I live in this city. They just don't remember anything. Okay. So after that, what happens is that in Alzheimer's, we forget, as we talked about the episodic memories and everything, the implicit, explicit, everything that is related to the personal things, that is related to the knowledge of the world. So in Alzheimer's, they don't remember anything. They do forget their names also. If you ask them that okay, and sometimes the grandparents do forget our parents also, that no, I don't know you, or who are you. They don't recognize their children also, or grandchildren also. So this is something which is a very serious and sensitive thing that do happens, and it is very difficult for families also to handle this thing. And then they do send their parents to old age homes and everything. But this is something that we have to be patient with, because this is happens with age, and medicines are there but they are not that much effective. So we have to be very patient with them, because this is not something that we can treat 100%. This is not curable at that much that much limit that we can say that okay, they can remember everything. No, they can't. And this is something that happens with time, with some people, not everyone. It's not like that with every older adult it will happen, it is meant to happen. It's not like that. Certain deficiencies are also there, like vitamin D deficiencies are there. Due to certain deficiencies also it happens, and due to some events or brain injuries, as I said, these things can happen. So so there are two types of amnesia also. In amnesia there is retrograde and anterograde amnesia. In retrograde amnesia, what happens is that we don't remember things that happened before the brain injury. Like I said, that amnesia is due to the brain injury. So it can happen due to a brain injury. So what happens in amnesia, retrograde amnesia, is that we don't remember the things that happened the before brain injury. So, and interrogate amnesia, we don't remember new things. After the brain injury has happened, we will not be able to store the things that are happening after the brain injury. So these are two types of amnesia that we encounter in our day-to-day life, that the person who is having amnesia. So it is very difficult for families also to handle their loved ones. It is very difficult. So it is said that you can keep a caretaker for them because you can't be available all the time, but it is very difficult. So that's all for the memory topic. And after that comes the emotions. So emotions and memory are very like interlinked. So what happens is that in before I explain emotions, I would like to explain that how emotions and memory are interlinked. So what happens is that we generally do remember the our happy emotions, our negative emotions. So we generally remember the negative emotions. I have experienced this, and I think I have seen this also. From my perspective, I would say that people do remember the negative emotions more than the positive emotions, because if you had some fight with someone, so you will remember that okay, I had this fight with my loved one only, or close one, anyone that could be of that matter. You will remember that okay, I had this fight with you on this day. But you might forget certain positive things that that person might have said to you earlier in life. You might not remember that, but you will remember that what that person said in that angry mood, in that angry state, what that person said to me. So the negative emotions do have a very powerful impact on our memory. So emotions are something that we show physiologically, behave in a behavioral pattern, or emotionally we show these things our body show. So there are certain very basic that we consider, that is happiness, sadness, disgust, fear, surprise, and anger. These are certain emotions that are very we consider as basic, these are the main emotions. So emotions are something that are very intense. These are very biological in nature, because sometimes we interchangeably use words like emotions, feelings, mood, but these are all different terms, these are not same terms. So emotions is different from feelings, and feeling is different from mood. So mood is something that is that goes for a long period of time, and it is something that is this is something also very not very much intense, but yeah, it goes for a long period of time. So feelings, so feelings is something like that our body encounter after the emotion have been activated in our body biologically. After that we experience feelings. So why do we have feelings? So feelings are it's basically the meaning that we give to that emotion, that we pay attention to that emotion, that okay, I experience that emotion biologically, now I am giving that emotion the name, that feeling, that frustration is there due to the anger. And then the mood, which is being present for the whole day, that I am being irritated for whole day because something happened in the morning, like I had an accident or something, someone damaged my car or something like that, I had a fight with my mother or something like that. So we'll have that whole mood in a whole day, and I will transfer that emotion mood to other people also, that I will be angry at my workplace, or I'll be angry at my college place, or anything like that. So mood is something that is lasts for a longer period of time. Then after that comes that like anger is emotion. Like what is it, if we have to see the difference between these two? So anger is something which is emotion, and irritation or frustration is something which is mood, as I talked about, that if something happens, so mood is something that I will be carrying on for whole day or for after day also, if I'm not talking to anyone, if I'm not expressing it to anyone, or I'm just keeping that to myself. So this is something that will stay with me for some days also, or for some, so like for the whole day also. So mood continues for some period of time as compared to emotion and feelings. Then there are three components of emotion. The first is the physiological, the second is the behavior of emotion, and third is the subjective experience, that the what label we give to that emotion. So physiological is something that is related to how my body will react. So whenever we encounter any challenging situation or stressful situation, there are certainly two things that happen in our body. The flight or fight situation. The flight is something that I will just run away from that situation, I will avoid that situation, and the fight is something that I will encounter that situation, and I will see that what I can do within that situation. And I if I'm in a challenging stressful situation, like something happened with me when I'm out, so I'll see that okay, what can be done in this situation, what I can do. Or if I am in a flight mode, then I would say that okay, I'll run away, go to my home, I'll see that what will happen in this situation, I'll see afterwards that what can be done in that. And also researches shows that emotion can have effect on our memory, like as I said in the start also, that positive moods are we do remember the negative moods as compared to the positive mood. But yes, happy emotions, like happy events that we had in our life, like a parent having the firstborn child, so they do remember that whole scenario, that okay, how was that feeling, how was that emotions, what emotions we experienced, and everything. They do remember that in their long term memory. Even if you ask them after 20-25 years, they will remember that okay, what feeling we had when we hold our child in our hands. So after that, results also show that emotion substantially influences memory performance in both negative and positive ways. Yeah, that's it. And any questions? But yeah.
Yes. So it was a very great kind of learning perspective through what you have taken memory and emotions
Yeah.
together in understanding. So my first question is, whenever a patient comes to you and
Hmm.
that might be diagnosed by a psychiatrist or neurologist,
Mm-hmm.
how do you consider that patient in terms of memory? How do you deal with that? What kind of questionnaires, what kind of checklist you apply to that patient?
Mm-hmm. So basically, whenever the patient comes to us, so it's not like that we will ask them about the disorder or something they are having. We generally start with building a rapport, because that person is stranger for me and I'm also stranger for that person. We don't know each other. So what I will do, create a friendly environment so that person can trust me and share that information. Generally, it happens very automatic. It happens in a very smooth way, because if we have developed that rapport, that patient will automatically tell about whatever he or she is facing due to the memory thing, the dementia the person is having, or amnesia he or she is having. So generally it happens that we generally create that rapport, that okay, how your day going, what's your name, who is in your family. So we create that rapport, and then afterwards we ask, if I know the whole history, that okay, the person is having dementia or amnesia, so I will ask that okay, how do you feel when something like this happens, or something like that. If I don't know anything about that person, then I will ask that okay, what you are facing in your day to day life, is there anything that's making you uncomfortable, that you are not able to deal with, so you want to discuss and share it with me so that I can help you out with that. So yeah, that's how it goes.
A patient comes with the patient comes with the caretaker or someone because he is having memory loss due
Mm-hmm.
to any reason, and that period
Mm-hmm.
of time to get the actual information is very difficult task. So what are the ways a psychologist or psychologist
Mm-hmm.
perform to get the at least information where the abstract can be taken out and proper counseling can be given to that patient?
So the caretaker is coming.
Yeah.
So caretaker, if caretaker is coming, then it's very easy, I guess, that caretaker can give us information to about that person, because the caretaker knows that person very well. So it is a very easy thing for us, that we will be creating that rapport with that our client who is having that disorder. Then after that, after some time, we can ask that client that okay, you can sit in the waiting room, and we can call the caretaker and take every type of information that we need about that client. And it would be very far better if the caretaker comes with the client, because it's very helpful for us in these cases. Because certain times what happens is that person also don't remember, even if he or she wants to tell us that this is what he or she is feeling, he or she is not remembering that okay, what I felt last night. Because memory loss is something, or dementia, amnesia is something which is very irritating for that person also, because that person is not able to recall. And if I'm asking that person that okay, how you felt last night, then it would be very irritated type of feeling for that person. So we don't ask such type of questions if the caretaker is there. So we prefer to ask that question from caretaker only, that how you handle the person in your house, or how, what are the behavior of this person, what he or she do in such type of situation, because that person knows everything, because that person is with that client from 24/7. So we can ask that person, so it's easy.
My last second question is to you that a
Hmm.
patient who is having memory loss or dementia or any kind of
Hmm.
issues related to the memory, there might be some cases where they feel difficult to accept that they are having these kind of issues. And if you tell them and if convince them, they might got into depression or anxiety because of that. Then
Hmm.
what are the ways to deal with that kind of difficulty?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a very good question, basically. So we don't try to make them accept this thing, because in these situations they do go into denial. And we don't, never ever, no psychologist or psychiatrist will try that we will say that okay, you have to accept that you have memory loss, or you have dementia, or you have amnesia. Will in any type of disorder, we'll never do that. We'll never say to our clients that you have depression, you have to accept that. No, we don't have to say that, and no one says that, no one should say that, even the family members should not say this. In any type of situation that could be of that matter, if you have lost your loved one, so some people do go into denial, that no, I will not believe that my loved one is not there. And if you're repeatedly telling that person daily, if the family members is telling that person that you have lost your loved one, you have to come into reality and accept that, that is very heartbreaking for that person, because that person is the denial state. And when a person is in denial state, it's better to leave that person in that state and work with that person in a very polite manner, that okay, you don't have anything, but we can do this thing, and ask that person that okay, how things are going in your life, so that that person can realize okay, something is happening with me. I am not able to perform my day-to-day life task. If dementia or amnesia is there, the person might be feeling this thing that okay, if I'm asking certain question, that person will say, sorry ma'am, I don't remember that. So that will strike in that person's mind that okay, I am not remembering things, I don't remember even the minute things that happening in my day-to-day life. So there is something. So this is something that happens with that person, and that person will only say you that okay, after a period of time, it takes time, no doubt it takes time. After 1 to 2 sessions it's not possible, it takes a lot of time and lot of patience also. So yeah, we do psycho educate the families also, that don't, please don't pressurize or say to that person that you have to accept this, and neither we do that you have to accept this. We just give that time, that space, and that's what we do, that we give that safe space to that person, and we have to be very patient with that person, that okay, it's okay that you don't want to accept certain things, it's nothing wrong in that. We will go like very smoothly, very patiently. So there's nothing that we in rush about. So in these cases we are very patient, we don't do in any type of disorder, we are not in any type of rush. And we ask families also, if the family member is there, that don't be in rush, be very patient with your child, with your grandparents, or with your parents if they're older, because these are certain things that is something neurological, that person also can't do anything, that's something happening in the brain. So you have to be patient, or you can just send that person to the hospitals. If that person is, if your parents or if your children are not able to take care of you, then you can come here, hospitals are there, so you have to then come, you leave your parents there, so then we can take care of them in a more proper way. So yeah.
So my last question to you that
Hmm.
what would be your concluding message to everyone or to every psychologist or a psychology student who are going to watch this?
So my only message is that firstly, that don't label someone. If you see anyone with depression, if you know anyone in your families also, if not only to psychology students, I would say to anyone out there, that don't label anyone that you have this, you have that, you are suffering from this. The word we use, suffering, is suffering from depression, that person is suffering from anxiety, that person is suffering from anything, we are making that person realize that, oh my god, this is something that will stop me from living my life in a happy way, or the life the normal people are living. You are making that person realize that that person is abnormal. So this is something that I have seen in my clients. I'm working with this organization from past 6 months, and people come to me and they just cry it out and say that, ma'am, we can't tell anyone because people just label us that, okay, you have this. I can't tell my parents. 15-16-year-old children are coming to me that, ma'am, I am having panic attacks, and I can't tell my parents because they just say that aisa kuch nahi hai, you use your phones or something, or they will just label you that, okay, aapko ye hai. So we can't focus. We are also normal living beings, so just consider them as normal and not something that make them realize ki that is something very abnormal. We have physical diseases also. We have diabetes. We don't react to a diabetic patient like this, oh my god, you're suffering from diabetes, ab kya hoga ya aisa kuch. We just give that medicine to that person and we ask you, okay, apna sugar cut down kar do. We just normally treat that person. So it's good that you treat every human if they're having any mental illness or mental issue. So treat that person in a same way that you will treat other person with a physical illness. There's no difference. Both things are similar. It's just that it's something physically happening and this is something mentally happening with you. So it's better to treat both in the same way, just as you go to the doctor, so you don't feel judged and doctor also don't judge you. Same way psychologists will also don't judge you. And I would say that all psychology students don't judge them, that if even if someone is in your personal life also coming to you, these are certain things that we all should apply in our personal lives also. That it's okay if someone is coming to you and expressing you that I'm becoming anxious, even if it's a small thing. Because I have seen that if it's a very minor thing also, and we generally say to our children, to our elder ones also, कि अरे इतनी बड़ी बात क्या हो गई, why are you creating a drama out of that. This is something that we need to understand, that must be very small thing for you, but that is very big thing for that other person. That must be very triggering for that person. That might not be useful for you, that okay मैंने तो ऐसे ही कह दिया, but तू इतना इस चीज को, why you're creating drama out of it. So we need to understand that every person is different, and things differently happen with every person's mind and every person's body react to differently. So yeah.
Thank you so much for your perspective, because it gives a lot more information rather than what we
Yeah.
read in books, what
Yeah.
we see in the classes. And that's what we want to understand from you, that how we can make a difference through your talk. And it
Yeah.
is a very good informative session of 30 minutes, which we can understand a different kind of memory aspects and how to implicate through our clinical practice.
Yeah.
So I thanks a lot from our whole team of OYG that you have come on our platform and given and share your knowledge with all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, OYG, for inviting me to the very good platform. You guys are doing a very, very good job. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.